All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Jeffrey Ledbetter. I'm the Director of Tax Help New Mexico. And this is the first in our series of trainings on the VITA certification program for the tax year 2023. In other words, we're going to be doing the taxes for the year 2023. We'll be doing them in 2024. We're going to be training using the Link Learn certification system and VITA's training resources. We might as well go ahead and take a look at a few of those things. A little bit of other business, as I mentioned to you folks before we started the actual presentation today. All these recordings, all of these presentations will be recorded. They will then, at the end of the day, be placed on our YouTube channel. Imelda will, at some point in this training, put the link to that YouTube channel so that you have that. If you miss a training or if you want to complete the training on your own time, this is the way you do it, and it'll be on the YouTube channel, the Tax Help New Mexico YouTube channel. And so all of these will be on that at the end of the day. So Mondays will be there at the end of the day. And again, Imelda just put that in the chat room. She's also put in the important training links, which was the 6744, which is the training book, which we got to have if we are going to actually take our test or take our certification test this year. What does that look like? Let's take a quick look right here. This is our training book. It's the link that Imelda just put in the chat room is to this book right here. We, as I scan down to the table of contents, today are going to be working on our volunteer standards of conduct test and our intake interview and quality review tests. Later on, when we go to our actual training and the test, we are going to be taking and training for the advanced test. It is on page 69. So if you get the link to this book, we are going to start our test on page 69. And as you see, it says advanced course scenarios and test questions, scenario 1, page 69. That's where we're going to start. This is the end of the basic test going into the advanced test. Again, there's also a retest after this, but we will be taking the test and studying for and doing all of our work for this advanced certification test starting on page 69. So beginning tomorrow and maybe today we'll get to this test question right here, but starting tomorrow we will be working out of this test book for all of our test questions throughout the whole course of the operation. You guys will have to do some practicing. This is not just the certification test training. You guys are going to have to do some practicing with a few scenarios. That is to be done in the practice lab. Now, as you have found out, if you go to Link Learn Test Certification, which is our training site, you get this. It says system maintenance in progress. This is our testing site. If you look up here in the address bar, it says link learn taxes certification.com. That is the website you will take these tests on and put your answers in. However, quite obviously, we can't do that right now. You can't do that right now because the system maintenance is in progress. It should be done by later this week or the beginning of next week. We will not finish this training until the end of next week, so it shouldn't be an issue because at the end of this training, you're going to be basically putting in your answers into this site, so we won't really need this site until you have gone through the training, which is at the end of next week. So we're going to hope that that site gets up and running. But that was also a way that we could access our practice lab, as I was saying. Since we can't access the practice lab through this site, we need to go over here, which is our home site for our actual VITA.taxslayerpro.com. This is where you go to our actual tax prep site. But if you look up here, this block in the upper left-hand corner, it says practice lab. We want to go to the practice lab. So you're going to want to go for your practicing and your homework to VITA.taxslayerpro.com. You're going to click on the practice lab right here. This is a universal password. So every time you want to go to the practice lab, you have to go to this section. And what is that password? It is TRAINPROWEB TRAINPROWEB, Train Pro Web, and it's all in capitals. This is also the point when I would suggest to all of you that you have a pencil, pen, and piece of paper next to you. We're going to be talking about passwords. We're going to be talking about websites. We're going to be talking about things you might want to take notes on. This is a prime example. You're going to need to use this password every time you go to the practice lab. And it's always going to be the same, and it's the same for everybody. And it's Train Pro Web, all one word, and it's all in capitals, just like I typed it. This will basically take you to the practice lab sign in. Now, if you do not have an account at the practice lab, you're going to just create an account. No big deal. Very simple to create an account. The only hard part about creating an account is they make you come up with a really complex password. It makes you think. It's something crazy like 15 characters with, it's all sorts of stuff. So you have to think about the password for this, but you're simply going to create an account. You're going to put in your email address. Now, the reason your email address is in there is so that you can, they're not going to sell you anything. Your email address is going to be put in here so that you can get your password back if you forget it. So you're going to put in your email address, you're going to create a username, and you're going to create a password. When it says program type, you're just going to put VITA, and you don't have to worry about this site identification number. And you're going to do this sort of generic password recovery question that we've all done before, which is the what's your pet's first name, where were you born, what's your mother's middle name, those kind of things. And you're going to choose a question. After you do this very, very simple create a new account, then you're going to be in your, have the account created. You're going to create your username and your password. And then when you sign in, it looks something like this. Excuse me. All of these little boxes here are videos. This is a wonderful site if you are interested in looking at any of these videos. These are all covering things that we are going to cover in our training. This is just a place where if you ask me about, can I find more about what you talked about today, Jeffrey, I'm going to send you to this area to look at some of the further material. You can on your own look at some of this material. You can use it as a resource, reference guide, however you want to do it. But it is here. But the main purpose of coming to the practice lab is to get us to the practice area, which is here. This is where we will start a new return for our practice lab, for our certification test. And as you can see, I've already done the certification test exam questions. And when I click on my client list, it shows me that I have those 3 returns sitting in there. And as you do these returns, they will live in your client list, personally, your own client list. And then you can re-access them at any time. So as we work on these returns a little bit later on in this week and next week, you'll be putting them in the practice lab. We'll be doing them together in the practice lab. And then you can come back and re-reference them anytime you want by just going to your client list and coming back in. We're not quite ready to get in there yet. We're going to go back to our test book. And we are going to go back up to the top. And one other item I want to introduce you to that is extremely important and we will be using every day, all the time, every question. It is everything for this program. It is this right here, which is the 4012. It is the VITA Volunteer Resource Guide. We like to say that all of the answers are in this book. Everything you need to know is in this book. How do I put stuff in TaxSlayer? How do I determine dependency? Any questions you might have, whether they are tax questions, what is the tax law affiliated with this question? Or whether they are, how do I put this in TaxSlayer? How do I actually put it into the computer? All of these are in the 4012, and we're going to get to know the 4012 really well over the course of this training. As I come through the table of contents, one of the things you're going to realize in this 4012, if you're using the digital version, which you should get used to using, is that these are all hyperlinked. And so it can take us to where we need to go or information that we need to find by simply clicking on, if we want to talk about the earned income, we could go to the earned income credit section by just clicking on it right like that, and it takes us there. We will get back to that earned income credit section later. But all the questions you need to ask as you are doing a tax return will be answered in this guide somewhere. If it's not in this guide, then it is most probably out of scope. What does out of scope means? Out of scope means that we are not trained to do a type of return. We are not allowed to do a type of return. Think of it like a box. There's a certain types of returns that we're allowed to do, and that's what you're going to be trained on in the next 2 weeks. We don't train you on all of the returns that are out there because we don't do those type of returns. And if somebody brings in one of those type of returns that's outside of this box that you've been trained on, that's out of scope. And you are going to tell that person you cannot do that return because it's out of scope. You have been not been trained for it. And more importantly, if you do a return that is out of scope, you lose your insurance or liability. So as long as you stay inside that box and do the returns that we have been trained to do, and don't go out rogue on your own doing returns just because somebody said, come on, you can do that. If you do one of those returns outside scope, then the liability issue shifts from the program. I'm sorry, go ahead. If you do a return outside the scope, the liability issue shifts from the program, which we have liability insurance for you, to you. So we don't want the liability on you. So remember that. If a return is out of scope, you do not want to have anything to do with it before liability issues, for simple issues like you haven't been trained to do it. And if somebody asks you to do a return that's outside of scope, you simply let them know that you're not trained to do it, and it also does compromise our insurance. And it shouldn't be a problem moving them on after that. All right, now, those of you who've been around for a while know how this works as far as the program goes, meaning what happens when somebody shows up to get their taxes done? Those of you who are new, I'm going to do a quick overview of what happens when somebody shows up to get their taxes done. When somebody shows up to get their taxes done, the very first thing that they are going to do at our site and at every site in the VITA program, not just our tax help sites, is they are going to fill out an intake form. And that intake form is going to gather, well, let's do this. Let's do this first. Those of you who are new, this is the 1040. This is the tax form for 2023. There's lots of boxes. It looks complicated, but it's not. It's broken down very, very simply. And as you can see, this tab B, tab D, tab F, tab C, those are references to this section of the income tax return. Obviously can be accessed through tab B. What does tab B mean? Tab B is that part of the 4012. Tab D is part of the 4012. In other words, it's section B, section D, section F, section C, section D. So real quickly, how does this individual income tax form work and how is it set up? This is a very basic overview, but it's a basic overview that also applies to the way the TaxSlayer program is set up. So when you get in to do the taxes, the information that you put into the computer will follow this same format as the tax return. So you will first be putting in the name, first name, last name, social security number, address, all the personal information that's up top here first when you do the tax return. And that's what's up here. This sort of, we call it the name, rank, and serial number, right? Your name, your address, all your social security number. This next little section down here is your filing status, whether you're single, you're married, filing joint, you're head of household, those kind of things. And we're going to obviously talk about all those a lot. Next is a digital assets question, which is new this year, and we'll be talking about that. And that has to do with whether you had any cryptocurrency dealings. We'll get into that a little bit more. That's going to be a yes or no question. That's fairly easy. The next section is the standard deduction section. Now, when we do our taxes in America, we get to make a choice as to what we do with our deductions. We have two choices. We can choose a standard deduction or an itemized deduction. The easy way to think of this is an itemized deduction. We want to deduct each item. And so we're going to list each item and say, hey, can I deduct this item from my taxes? And we're going to go individually through each item and make a list. And there's a list from the IRS that says, yes, you can deduct this. No, you can't deduct this. Yes, you can deduct this. No, you can't deduct this. You also have the choice to take a standard deduction. Now, what a standard deduction is it is a way for somebody who does not have a lot of items in their itemized deduction to be able to have an actual deduction from their income that makes it a fair system for rich people versus poor people. In other words, if you have a lot of money and get to spend a lot of things, spend for a lot of items, you might have more items on your itemized list and be able to take more off of your income. If you don't have those items because you simply don't have the money to participate in that, that would mean that you would not be able to participate in getting a deduction if you didn't have the items. The standard deduction is the IRS's way of saying, we're going to give you a pretend deduction of, I think roughly this year, it's like $12,500. So it allows people who do not have individual items based on their personal business to still claim a deduction. Almost 100% of the returns that we will see will be using the standard deduction, and the standard deduction will be applied by the computer. The next section is dependents. Do they have any kids? We'll talk about how you decide whether those kids are actual dependents and whether they can claim them. Then the next section is income. All of their income will be in this section or end up in this section. We may go to another section to have it flow to this section, but right here, all of their income is in lines 1A to line 15 down here. This section covers all of their income, and then, as you can see in line 15, it ends with taxable income. So all of our income section comes next. So we're going to enter their name, we're going to get their filing status, we're going to see if they have any dependents, then we're going to enter their income. Then we have to figure out their taxes and credits and anything they might have. We're going to do that next, and then we're going to figure out their payments. So taxes and credits, think child tax credit, think other credits that might give people money back based on their life situations. Then payments is going to be where we're going to apply the income tax that they had paid, like income tax withheld and all that. And once we do the math, in other words, once we say, how much was your income? How much were your tax and credits? How much were your payments? That's going to leave us with a number. That number is either going to be a refund, which we are going to be listed here, or it's going to be the amount you owe. This is simply a mathematical process. It starts with your income, brings in your credits, brings in your payments, and at a certain point, it figures out whether you have money to come back, a refund, you paid too much in, or you didn't pay enough in, you have amount that you owe. That's the progress through a tax return, and that's going to be the progress through our inputs, the way we put information into the Tax Slayer program. When everybody shows up to get their taxes done, the very first thing they will do 100% of the time at every single site is they will fill out this right here. In the business, we call it the 13614C, but what it is it's the intake sheet. It's the 3-page intake sheet that's given to every client that comes in. As you can see, this is numbered to have us walk through this, but this is set up to get the client to give you their name, their contact number, whether they're a U.S. citizen, their mailing address, their date of birth, their spouse's date of birth, their job title, whether they were permanently disabled, spouse is permanently disabled, part-time student. And then starting right here, it's about dependency issues. We're going to get dependency issues. They're going to list any kids or anything dependents that they have on there. Right here is what we're looking at is that dependents section. They're going to list what they think their marital status is. They're going to list the dependents. And you can start to see this is set up exactly like the tax return is set up. Now, this is the people filling this out before they've actually talked to us. So they're going to fill out their dependent. And then this is the important thing. They filled out who they are, their kids, all that stuff. But now there is 2 pages of questions, of just questions. You can see right here, each question has an answer of yes, no, or unsure. So the client is going to read the question and respond with an answer of yes, no, or unsure. Now, if you notice this very first question, the easiest one for us to discuss, says wages or salary. In other words, did you have any wages or salary? Meaning, did you have a job? If you answered yes, which most of our people will, you'll notice in parentheses at the end of this question is a form. It says Form W-2. So now we know if this person checked this box yes, they are telling us. Now we have to remember too that they might not always know. We have to follow up on these questions. But if they check yes, that means they are saying, yes, I had wages or salary. And they are saying and telling us that that means they are going to be presenting us with a Form W-2. So on this form, you don't have to memorize anything. You have to understand that if they have wages and salary, you are going to be asking them for a Form W-2. It says it right here on the questionnaire. When the client has filled out this questionnaire all the way through and completed it, they will then come to you as a tax preparer. And it is your job, first and foremost, to go through each one of these questions. If it's yes, then you're going to want to see the form that's associated with that question. So they said, yes, I had wages and salary. Well, I need to see a Form W-2. Well, and there's also a follow-up question for this particular question that says, if yes, how many jobs did you have? Because folks sometimes have a couple jobs. And if they say 2, then what do I want to see? I want to see 2 W-2s, right? And if they come down here and they got some scholarships, then we want to see these forms. If they had interest or dividends, we want to see these forms. If they had this and that and the other, they're going to go through all of these questions. And there's a lot of questions. You can see the first part has to do with their income. The next part has to do with their expenses. The next part has to do with additional information and personal information. The procedure is outlined right here in these numbers. And if you have any questions, you can see these numbers are reference guide for the 4012. But this also gives us an idea, again, of how we start this process. So 100% of the time, the client is going to come into our office and fill out this form. Then, as we are introduced to the client and matched with the client, here is the way the procedure works, right here. You are going to view the photo ID for each taxpayer and spouse. In other words, you're going to look at the taxpayer and the spouse's ID. You're also going to look at everybody's Social Security card. So if we have a mom and a dad and 2 kids on this sheet, we're going to want to see an ID for the mom, we're going to want to see an ID for the dad, and we're going to want to see a Social Security card for the mom, and we're going to want to see a Social Security card for the dad, and we're going to want to see a Social Security card for each of the dependents. We do not need to see an ID for the dependents. So as you start every single tax return, the person is going to hand you this yellow sheet. You are going to ask to see their ID and Social Security cards. And you are going to see the ID for the taxpayer and the spouse, and you are going to see the Social Security cards for everyone on the return. So if this was mom and dad and 3 kids, you would have an ID for mom, an ID for dad, and 5 Social Security cards. Okay, that's the way you're going to start every single return. And then as you go in, you're going to go through the name, make sure the name matches the driver's license. You're going to check and make sure the address, like the apartment, all those kind of things, make sure that it's filled out properly. You're going to make sure all of these are filled out. And if there's any questions, if they haven't filled it out, you are going to ask them and fill it out with them. Any of these questions, as you get to these that are marked unsure or no, I would make sure that you re-ask those questions, because a lot of times people don't understand what they do or don't have. they didn't take this class. They don't know necessarily what form they're supposed to have or what they're referring to when we might be talking about disability income. They may receive social security disability. They may receive some other form of disability. But if they check unsure or yes or anything like that, we just want them to take that second follow-up question with every question that's in here to make sure that they've understood the question correctly as well, and that we get the proper form. All right, that's just a sort of overview of what happens once you get through this form and are confident you have got all the questions answered correctly and you have all the forms. That's when you would begin the return. Just for full explanation purposes, once you finish the tax return, 100% of the time, every tax return is reviewed by one of your peers. So as soon as you finish a tax return, you're going to call for a review. Somebody is going to come review your tax return, basically go through the whole thing. And once they sign off on that review, they're going to return you back to the tax return, return the taxes back to you, where you will then go through the taxes with the taxpayer. You will have them sign for the taxes and you will give them their copy of the taxes. And then we will, after a secondary and a third check, e-file their federal and state taxes later on. So that's the overall sort of process. And the way it works is we just do that over and over and over again. Every single time they come in, they're going to fill out this form. Every single time somebody comes in, we're going to ask to see their ID and social security cards. Every single time you get a tax return done, you're going to get it reviewed. Every single time you do a tax return and it's been reviewed, you are going to go over it with the client. And every single time you have gone over it with the client, the last thing you're going to do is you're going to get the client to sign for that tax return on a form that I'm going to show you. That's the procedure over and over and over again. Now, quite obviously, the uniqueness is that each client's going to have unique needs and situations. And part of this form at the beginning and part of our responsibility at the beginning is to do a quality interview to make sure that we have all of the information. The last thing you want to have is have them put all that information out and you not ask enough questions to know that you're missing some forms, and you get all the way to the review process and they say, hey, are you going to need this form from unemployment? You're going to say, yes, I needed that a while back when I was putting in your income. You're going to have to go back and put in those forms. So you need to do due diligence when you are going through this form and interviewing the clients, simply because we want to make sure that we do an accurate job of collecting all the paperwork that they need to provide for us. One of the things that the 4012 I told you before has all the answers for. This is an example of how you will find answers in the 4012. It's not legalese. What they do is they use a lot of decision trees and like I say, a lot of decision trees, basically. Now this right here is the decision tree for filing status. And we will, for example, just take a quick look at this, and it says start here. And every time you are going to talk to somebody, this is kind of where you're going to start. And one of the easiest ways to start is by asking this question: were you married on the last day of the year? Or what were you on the last day of the year? And if they say they were married on the last day of the year, then let's, for example, say, yes, they were married. We would follow this line over here. And then it would ask us another question. It said, did you and your spouse live apart for the last 6 months of the year? We're going to say, no, I'm married. So it said, nope. Then you go right over here. And it's going to say your filing status is either married filing jointly or married filing separate. So if we go up here and we start again and it says, were you married on the last day of the year? I say, no, I'm a single guy. So I follow the no box down. And it said, did your spouse die during the year? I'm like, no, I'm just a single guy. Do all of the following apply? Your spouse died in 2021? No, that one right off the bat, because it said do all of the following apply. And I'm just a single guy who's never been married. So my spouse died in 2021 and I did not remarry. Well, that doesn't apply. So I know that all of them won't. Even if the other three do, that one didn't. So it's going to be no. And it said, did I pay more than half the cost of keeping up the house for a period of time? Yes. And it says, do I have a qualifying person? Well, no, I don't. So I say no, and then it's single. It takes me where I need to go. Now, single and married filing joint are the easy ones. Qualified surviving spouse, head of household, and other things like that are not as easy. Um, Head of household is usually the tricky one. Head of household, for those of you that don't know what that means, the simple way to think of head of household is single parent. You cannot be head of household without a child, qualifying child. You will meet somebody that says, I am the head of my household. You can say, yes, ma'am, I believe that you are the head of your household. However, without a qualifying child, you don't qualify for the head of household status in the tax preparation process. People will tell you that they want to file as head of household. They want to make that choice. It is not their choice to make that decision. You have to have that child. One of the reasons they will tell you we want to be head of household is because there's more money in it than if you are single, because there's a child being taken into consideration. So again, even for a simple question of are you single, are you married, those kind of things, it's not always that easy. You may be married and your spouse may not have been in your life for an amount of time, and that may change your filing status. And this tree and other decision-making trees in this 4012 will help you make decisions about things like filing status, college credits, child tax credits, other things like that. There's all sorts of stuff in here to help you figure that out. We're going to get plenty of chances to use those. We are at 33 after right now, so I've kind of given you a little bit of an overview of what's going on. And you can see in the 4012, right at the very beginning, there's that menu. Now, when we looked at it in our practice lab, it just had the start new 2023 tax return and client search. That's for the practice lab. But here in the 4012, they're showing you what it looks like when you're going to start a new return. And as you can see, as you start a new return, it's going to ask you for the social security numbers. If there's any data to import, it's going to do that. So in this 4012, you're getting screenshots of what the screen is going to look like on the TaxSlayer program that you are working with. So you're going to be able to answer tax questions, and the administrative, what am I doing in TaxSlayer, where do I put it, are all sort of in the same area. So you're getting the interpretation of the tax law plus where do I put it and how do I input it into the machine, basically, in the 4012. Again, the 4012 is the book with all the answers. But in this last half hour, we are going to go back to our test book, and we're going to do a little bit of maintenance work here. You guys make sure that you have a way to take notes. Make sure that you keep track of question 1, question 2, question 3, question 4. What you're going to need to write down is question 1, whether that question 1 is answer A, B, C, D, or E. And then question 2, whether that's A or B. Now, you're going to have to write it down so that you are able to put it into the Link Learn tax program or certification program later. So in other words, the trick is you don't want to get your 1A confused with 2A. You want to make sure that you have your answer, your test number, question, and your answer so that you don't screw that up when you take the test, right? Now, these are what I call the don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal tests, and the basic volunteer standards of conduct test. These are required by the IRS before we get into the other tests. And so I like to get these out of the way. And we're going to do that right now. So again, I'd like for you to pay attention, obviously, but I need you to make sure that you write down the answers. You are not able to put it into the machine right now because of this. Remember, you can't do this because of that guy. So you're going to have to write these down and write them down in a manner and a way that will allow you to come back to them later and understand that this is the first one that we're going to be doing is the volunteer standards of conduct test. And then you can come back and you can see that this test and have those answers. Not that hard, guys. Just make sure you get it organized. All right, we're going to walk through this together. Prior to working at a VITA site, all volunteers, the greeters, the facilitators, the preparers, the quality reviewers, everybody must A, annually pass the Volunteer Standards of Conduct certification test with a score of 80% or higher. That is the test we're taking right now. And yes, you have to do that. Let's look at B. Sign and date the Form 13615 Volunteer Standards of Conduct Agreement, agreeing to comply with the Volunteer Standards of Conduct by upholding, the highest ethical standards. Well, yes, that's why it's called the don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal test, right? So you cannot lie, cheat, and steal. You need to agree and comply with the standards, which is basically don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. And it says pass the advanced tax law certification. Well, as you noticed in our book, we are going to be taking the tax law certification on page 69. I made it very clear that that's the test we are going to take. This question asked us if all volunteers and everybody must pass the advanced tax law certification test. The answer is no. I require you to pass the test. The IRS does not. So if C is not true, then it can't be all of the above. So is it both A and B? Well, let's go back to A and B. A, annually pass the Volunteer Standards of Conduct test. That's the test you're taking, and you got to pass it with an 80. So yes, A. And then sign and date the form that says you agree to not lie, cheat, and steal. Well, yeah. So that's A and B. So it looks like answers to question 1 is E, A and B. Okay. Let's look at 2. Can a volunteer be removed and barred from the VITA program for violating the standards of conduct? In other words, can you be removed from the program for lying and cheating and stealing? Yes, you can. A, you can. The answer to question 2 is yes. A, you can be removed from the program by not complying with the conduct. 3, if a taxpayer offers you a $20 bill because they were so happy about the quality of service they received, what is the appropriate action to take? This is a fun question. Do you take the $20 and thank the taxpayer for the tip? Well, no, you don't do that because we don't take any money from folks to get the taxes done. So if you take the money, you have broken the volunteer standards of conduct, and we can bar you for that. One of the ways you can get barred and one of the ways to break the conduct is by taking money, taking the $20. So A is definitely not correct. B is awesomely creative, but still not correct. It says, tell the taxpayer it would be better to have the $20 directly deposited into your bank account from your refund. It's like Venmo me, right? No, you can't Venmo me either. None of that. You can't do that, right? You cannot do that. So let's look at C. Thank the taxpayer. That sounds like a good start. And explain that you cannot accept any payment for your services. Boom, that's it. That is the right answer. What is D? Refer the taxpayer to the tip jar located at the quality review and print station. Well, no tip jar is allowed either. So the answer to question 3 is you can thank the taxpayer and explain to the taxpayer that you cannot accept any payment for your services. Period. Answer to question 3, C. 4, these are going to get a little more wordy, but not too much more complicated. Jake is an IRS tax law certified volunteer preparer at a VITA site. When preparing a return for Jill, Jake learns that Jill does not have a bank account to receive a direct deposit of her refund. Jill is distraught when Jake tells her that the paper refund check will take 3 to 4 weeks longer than the refund being directly deposited. Pretty much drama, huh? Jill asks Jake if he can deposit her refund in his bank account and then turn the money over to her when he gets it. What should Jake do? Well, Jake should not deposit her refund in his bank account and then turn it over to her when he gets it. He should not do that. So let's see what he should do. Let's see. A, Jake can offer to use his account to receive the direct deposit and turn the money over to Jill once the refund is deposited. That is such a big fat no, it's not even funny, and it actually borders on illegal. So we don't even want to go there. Depending on the size of the refund and other things, you may end up in a situation where you have criminal issues involved. So A, no, you cannot put somebody else's refund in your bank account, period. All right, how about B? Jake should explain that a taxpayer's federal and state refund cannot be deposited into a volunteer's bank account, and she will have to open up an account in her own name to have the refund direct deposited. Yes, that is exactly what has to happen. She has to have her own account to have her money directly deposited into it. So at this point, now there are conversations about, could I put it in somebody else's bank account, this other bank account? Well, we'll talk about that later on, but for the purposes of this test and just common sense, we need to put the refund of a person in the bank account of the person, not in anybody else's bank account. So B looks like a good one because she doesn't have an account, so she needs to go open one. And then Jake, let's see, C. Jake can suggest she borrow a bank account number from a friend because the taxpayer's name does not need to be on the bank account. Again, this is no, 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 no. Now, are there exceptions to this? There are in the legal sense, but we're not going to talk about that right now. What we need to understand is that the bank account and the client need to be linked up. We cannot be putting money in any bank accounts that are not affiliated with that client. Whether it's a friend's account or your account, no, cannot do that. The answer to 4 is B. Let's go to 5. Max prepares a tax return for Ali at a VITA site. He finds out during the interview, remember everybody does that interview at the beginning, that Ali has no health insurance. After Ali leaves the site, Max writes her name and contact information down to take home to his wife, who sells health insurance for profit. Which of the following statements is true? All right. There is no violation of the volunteer standards of conduct unless Max's wife makes a big commission on the sale of health insurance to Ali. It's not about whether you make the money or not. It's whether or not you commit the action of taking somebody's information without their permission and giving it out. So I don't know if it's about the making of the money. I don't think that that statement is true. It doesn't feel true. But let's go to B. Max has violated the volunteer standards of conduct. Now, pay attention to this because he is using the information he gained about Ali, a client, to further his own or another's personal benefit. That is exactly what you cannot do. You cannot use the personal information you gained to further your own or another personal benefit. You cannot do that. You can't say, oh, wow, it looks like on your return, you have skills, this, way, that. You can't use that information to further your own deal. Now, if you have a conversation with that person and that conversation continues after the workplace, that's a whole different story. But you cannot gain in any financial way from the benefit. So B is absolutely true for 5. C, Max is doing her a favor by using her personal information to secure business for his wife. Again, you're using personal information without permission to gain business for his wife. That's a big fat no. Again, and D is obviously wrong. Information a taxpayer provides can be used for the volunteer's personal gain. No. Question 5. B is the correct answer. You cannot use information gained to further your own or another person's financial benefit. 6. Bob is an IRS tax law certified volunteer preparer. He told the taxpayer that cash income does not need to be reported because the IRS does not know about it. Well, that's not necessarily true. Cash income might or might not be known by the IRS, depending on how the reporting party dealt with it. You might have been a client who was paid in cash. You might have been got a tip money. There's various ways, and you don't necessarily know whether the person who gave you that money has reported it to the IRS. So we don't know about whether the IRS knows about it or not. And either way, cash as income is still income and should be reported. But Bob has told this taxpayer that they don't have to report it because the IRS doesn't know about it. So on that intake form, Bob, the preparer, indicated no cash income on that form. And then Bob prepared the tax return, excluding the cash income. Then here comes Jim, the designated quality reviewer. He wasn't privy to that conversation, so he was unaware of the conversation about the cash income, and he reviewed the return. It was he was okay, and he was printed and signed and off and e-filed. So who violated the standards of conduct? Was it Bob, the guy at the beginning, who's taxpayer, who said we don't need to report it? Was it Jim, the quality reviewer, who missed it, but he didn't really know it because he was unaware of it? Is it Betty, the coordinator? I don't know why Betty's involved. I'm not sure why we're picking on Betty. I think Betty's probably okay in this whole deal. And then no one has violated the standards of conduct. Well, very clearly, Bob has given erroneous information to the client. And he has given her erroneous information that has created a false tax return. And so Bob has knowingly created a false tax return. Now, if that sounds bad, it kind of is. You don't want to knowingly create a false tax return. I think it's not necessarily just a bad thing to do. I think there's a criminal element involved in that. We do not want to create false tax returns that we know are false. And that's what Bob is doing here. And he is also using erroneous information. So it is Bob, the tax law volunteer, who has violated the standards of conduct by giving out erroneous information and pushing it through the system. So A, 6 is A. 7, Sue, a VITA coordinator, was watching the local news when she saw Aaron, a newly certified tax law volunteer, in a story about several bank employees being arrested for suspicion of embezzlement. She saw Aaron being led out of the bank in handcuffs. 3 days later, she is shocked when she sees Aaron show up at the site ready to volunteer, apparently out on bond. She pulls Aaron aside and explains that his arrest on suspicion of embezzlement could have a negative effect on the site, and therefore she must ask him to leave the site. She removed his access to the software and then uses the external referral process to report the details to the SPEC, which is the IRS headquarters, by sending on this official email. Did she take appropriate actions as a coordinator? Well, if there's an official email to take those actions, then she probably did take the actions. So yes, for 7, she took the appropriate actions, and she has every right to do that again, and he did violate the standards of conduct, and she removed him. Yes, for 7. 8, Sam is assigned to prepare a taxpayer's return. The taxpayer has been waiting a long time due to the volume of taxpayers needing services. The taxpayer is agitated when they sit with Sam. How should Sam interact with the taxpayer? Should he keep calm? Probably. Should he create a peaceful and friendly atmosphere? That's a good idea. Should he remain professional and courteous? Well, always remain professional and courteous. So the answer is going to be all of the above for this question. And that's just going to be, this question is just a reference to the fact that sometimes when you deal with money and taxes, you have people who don't understand it and might get confrontational, people who ask you questions that are difficult to answer, or they might want you to do something that you can't do. But in other words, you just need to keep calm, good atmosphere, remain professional. And if you do have any issues beyond that, you always have somebody that you can raise your hand who will come and help you. There's always a hierarchy. Well, somebody's right there. So if you do have any issues, do not be afraid to reach out. If somebody makes you feel uncomfortable, somebody makes you feel threatened in any way, shape, or form, you should reach out right away, run that up the flagpole, get that stopped right away. But you do need to sort of keep a calm atmosphere, be cool and professional on your side as well. So the answer is D, all of the above for 8. 9, VITA sites and volunteers must not solicit business from taxpayers or use taxpayer information for personal business benefit. We kind of went over that on, I think, question 5. You can't use it for your own benefit. So VITA sites and volunteers must not solicit business. That is a true statement. You must not. So 9 is true. 10, Ben is preparing a tax return and the taxpayer has a dependent listed, like probably a kid or something. Here it is. The dependent is the child of the taxpayer's cousin. Wait a minute. Is the child of the taxpayer's cousin. The child lived with the taxpayer a few months. Ben prepared the return and noted on the intake form that the child lived with the taxpayer all year. Did he violate the standards of conduct? Well, yes, he did. This is just what we were talking about. Did he knowingly prepare a return with false information? Yeah, he did. He knowingly did. So we don't want to do that, right? Now, in this case, there would have been some research and some next steps that would have had to happen. But by not doing that and simply preparing it without following up in any way, shape, or form, and simply putting that dependent on there, knowing that it was a child of the cousin, Ben knowingly prepared a return with false information. So A is the correct answer. What does B say? B, yes, but the return was accepted, so everything is fine. That is not a cure-all. C, no, the cousin gave him permission. No, the cousin wasn't filing return. So this is the thing to remember is you just want to make sure that your information is not false information. And if it feels like it's not complete information, you want to follow up on that. Now, this particular information was not complete. Then he filed it, which made it false information. He needed to do a little more research on this, but the answer to 10 is A, false information. Now, we're going to take a little breath. We got ourselves this far, and we are going to do another one of these real quick here. This one is called the intake interview and quality review test questions. This has to do with that procedure that I told you about that we do every single time, which is people show up, they fill out the form, we ask for their IDs, their social security cards, we go through the review sheet, we ask them to follow up with any questions that we might have on the review sheet. Then we do their taxes, and their taxes are reviewed, and then we go over their taxes with them, and then we have them sign for their taxes, and then away they go. And then we start that exact same process over and over again. These questions have to do with that process. So let's look at question 1. All IRS certified volunteer preparers participating in the program, VITA program, must use Form 13614C, that's the intake form, along with a thorough interview for every return prepared at the site. That's exactly what I just said. That is a true statement. That is exactly what has to happen. So 1 is A, true. 2, what must the certified volunteer preparer do with that form before starting the tax return? Should they make sure all the questions on the form are answered? Well, yeah, they should. Should they change any unsure answers to yes or no based on the conversation with the taxpayer? They absolutely need to do that. Should they determine the certification level required to complete the return? Well, yes, they should, but we have the benefit of knowing that it really doesn't matter with that return level because we're all going to be certified at advanced. But we do need to determine the certification level of the return. So in this case, question 2, all of those need to happen every time. Every time you're going to go through those unsure answers. Every time you're going to go through all those and check and make sure they have the forms. So the answer is D, all the above for 2. The basic certification level is required to prepare a return with tip income. Well, if we go to our 4012, let's see if I can find this. I don't think I put my notes down there. In the essence of time, I did not look this up and notate the page. I did look it up. I didn't notate the page. So what I'm going to tell you is you can look this up under income, the income section. And we're just running out of time. I don't want to get too crazy. We can come into, we must file, and this is our table of contents, all dependents, income. We can go to our income section and let's see where it is. Excluded income, where to enter income. I don't want to, it's in this section and it's kind of in fine print, and it goes through the various types of income, which we should talk about for just a sec. Various types of income. Tip income is obviously income, but most people don't understand stuff like unemployment is income, various other things. And here's obviously a list of some income. But when I look up in the book about tip income, and again, for purposes, I apologize that I didn't notate the page on there. It says that the certification level for somebody doing tip income is, oh, I know where we can find that. Let's do this real fast. Let's go back up here to going to be right on the intake sheet, and I'm going to show you where it's at right now. The question is, what's the certification level for tip income? All right, as we ask the sections, the very first section is income. The very, oh, you can't see it. There it is right there. It's question 2, tip income. See that A after that 2? That says advanced. See the B up top for the W2? That says basic. But for tip income on number 2, you have to be an A, which is advanced. So if we go to our test and it says the basic certification level is required to prepare a return with tip income, that's false. It's advanced. B, false. 4, a date must be entered on the form. Oh, a date must be entered on the intake form, part 2, the marital status and household information, to determine the appropriate filing status of the taxpayers who are either divorced, legally separated, widowed, or all of the above. One of the things, if you remember our dependency tree that we looked at, the very first question is, were you married at the end of the year? And if you say, no, I was not married at the end of the year, we say, well, then were you divorced? They say, yes. We say, well, when were you divorced? They have to put a date. And if we say, were you married at the end of the year? And they say, no. And we say, well, what the heck were you? They say, I was legally separated. We want to say, well, when were you legally separated? What's the date? And then they say, we say, well, were you married at the end of the year? And they say, no. And we say, well, what happened? And they say, well, my spouse died. I was widowed. Well, we say, when did your spouse die? So on that intake form, we are asking for them to put the date of all of those 3 events so that we know that they happened in the tax year and we know whether or not it was over 6 months or under 6 months. So the answer is going to be all of the above. And the reason is because as soon as we ask that first question, were you married last year? And they say no. If it's divorced, we need to know when they were divorced. If it's no, and they say legally separated, we just need to know when. And if they're widowed, we need to know when. And so, yes, we have to know the dates for all of the above. So a date must be entered on that form to determine the appropriate filing status for taxpayers who are divorced, legally separated, or widowed. For all of the above. 4 is all of the above. 5, VITA volunteers use publication 4209, Privacy, Confidentiality, Civil Rights, a Public Trust to determine what is within scope. That's just, we won't go into that, but that's a true statement. It may not be a true statement. I can't remember the 4299. We're going to put it as true now, and we're going to revisit that question. But you're not going to really be using that. You're going to be using a chart that I'm going to give you for your scope. I just can't remember the answer to that question right now. I think it is true. But we'll go back and before you put it in, we can't put it in the machine yet anyway. So we'll revisit that one. I just can't remember it. But we won't be using that. We at this VITA will not be using that because I will be giving you a separate list of the scope stuff. Question 6, VITA sites are required to conduct quality reviews. A quality review is when somebody reviews your return after you have prepared it. So when does a return get quality reviewed? For all returns prepared by volunteers who have less than 2 years of experience preparing returns. No, that is not right. B, for every return prepared at the site. That is correct. Remember what I said at the very beginning, 100% of the time, 100% of the returns will be quality reviewed for every return at the site. That is the answer to 6. C is not the right answer, only when there is a quality review available. D is not the right answer for all returns prepared by volunteers with certification levels below advanced military or international. The answer for 6 is B. We quality review every return prepared at the site, period. 7, In most cases, a volunteer must review photo ID for every taxpayers to prevent the possibility of identity shift. The answer is true. Now, they have a couple caveats. They say in most cases, this and that and the other. But what you need to remember is the taxpayer and the spouse, the mom and dad, or the mom and the mom, or the dad and the dad. It doesn't matter. If they're legally married, the spouses, you need to see their ID. You also need to see the social security card for everybody on the return. You do not need to see the ID for the dependents. And in this case, it is saying, in most cases, a volunteer must review the photo ID for every taxpayer or taxpayers, meaning the spouse, to prevent the possibility of identity theft. That is true. 7 is true. When does the taxpayer sign the tax return? That's probably going to be the last thing they do, right? So when do they sign it? Do they sign it before the quality review? Well, no. Doesn't even matter what it says after that. Do they sign it before the quality review? No. Do they sign it after the quality review? Yes. And before being advised of their responsibility for the accuracy of the information? No. If it's the last thing they're going to do, it's not before anything. So after the quality review is done, and after they've been told that all of the information on the tax return is, well, the information you gave us, and so the accuracy is on you because you gave us the information, that's when they sign. The very last thing. So after the review, after being advised of their rights and their responsibilities, they sign it. It's the last thing. After everything is when they sign it. D. And then you would give them a copy of their tax return. So they would sign it, then you would give them a copy afterwards. So I guess that's the final. 9, the site is busy with many taxpayers waiting for assistance. All volunteers are busy preparing tax returns. Can you quality review the return you just prepared instead of waiting for somebody else to review the return? But we should all know the answer to this already, even in our first hour of training. Is the answer yes, if it is a returning taxpayer? No, that is not correct. Is the answer yes, with the approval of a site coordinator? No, that is not the right answer. No, well, that's the right answer. No, you just prepared a return instead of waiting for somebody else. Can you quality review it? Well, the answer is no. But which one of these no's is it? Is it no? Self-review is never an acceptable quality review method. That sounds correct. Said no, unless you are certified at the advanced level. No. The correct answer is C. No, you cannot review your return, and self-review is never an acceptable quality review method, period. 9, C. 10, which of the following is true? Quality review can be conducted by a volunteer preparer certified at BASIC when the tax return required an advanced certification to prepare. Think about that for a second and apply a little common sense. Can a return preparer who is only certified in BASIC review a return done by a person who did a return, who's certified in advanced and did an advanced return? In other words, can the second graders review the fifth graders' homework? The answer is no. You cannot. No. So you cannot review a return that is below your quality level. We get around that at Tax Help by having everybody certified advanced. But let's get this question right. Which of the following is true? Quality review can be conducted by a volunteer preparer certified at BASIC when the tax return required an advanced certification to prepare. No, second graders cannot review the fifth graders' work. It doesn't work like that. Not A. Quality review is conducted after the taxpayer signs the tax return. Didn't we just go over this? The signing is the last thing they do. You're not going to be quality reviewing after it. C. Quality review is an effective tool for preparing an accurate tax return. That's very anticlimactic, but that's the right answer. That's very much the right answer. And D, taxpayers do not need to be involved in the quality review process. That is incorrect. The taxpayer is absolutely involved in the quality review process, just like they were involved in the preparation process. Okay, those are our 2 don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal tests. We are at 11:06. That gets us to the end of the first hour of our certification training. Again, what we did today was just introduce you to some of the materials, introduce you to some of the overview of the program, and get through these 2 tests. We will, in earnest, begin working on the test tomorrow. We will start tomorrow on page 69 of this test guide. We will also be referencing the 4012 extensively. And again, you will be needing to take notes. So you will need to have access to the 4012. You will need to have access to the 6744, which is the test booklet. And again, paper and pencil that you will be writing down answers and notes for. Your homework for today, for tomorrow, is to go to this site, VITA.TaxSlayerPro.com, VITA.TaxSlayerPro.com. You're going to go to this site. You're going to click on this practice lab box. You're going to go here. You're going to put TRAINPROWEB in all caps in this box, like that. You're going to hit login. You're going to, if you have not already done it, you're going to create an account. You're going to put your email address here. You're going to put a username that you are going to make up here. You're going to put a password that you are going to have difficulty coming up with because it's very complex here, but you're going to come up with that. You're going to select VITA right here. You're not going to worry about this site ID, and you're going to do a security question, and you're going to create your account. Once you've created your account, you're going to go ahead and sign in to make sure you can sign in. And then you're going to go to the practice area to make sure you can go to the practice area. Your assignment, your homework assignment is to be able to get to this page. Be able to get to this page. So to do it, you have to create the account. You have to go to that TRAINPROWEB. You have to start out here. VITA.TaxSlayer.pro, VITA.TaxSlayerPro.com. Go to Practice Lab, create your account, and just make sure you can get to this practice area, okay? We will start by going through any problems anybody had with this next time, and we will begin on page 69 of the training guide with test question 1 on the advanced scenario. That is it for today. That's our first session. I'm going to go ahead and stop the share. Again, that's the end of session 1. I'm going to stop the recording now, and thank you guys for today. All right, that is the end of session 1, guys. As I said before, tomorrow, 10 o'clock, we're going to be starting the actual test. It's going to be fairly slow, and if you're new to this, what we're going to get into starting tomorrow is going to be repetitious and not that fast. All right. So as you're sitting there going, I still have no idea what the hell's going on, that's fine. As we move forward, we're going to be doing a lot of repetition. So if you're new to this, you're going to be doing the same thing over and over and over again. And I guarantee that as we get to the last session in 2 weeks here, or in 10 sessions, you will be able to confidently do a simple W-2 tax return. I guarantee it. If you're new to this program, I guarantee you will be confident in your ability to do a simple tax return by the end of the program. And then that will get you to the actual sites where you will be paired up in our program with a partner to get you through some of the next levels. Those of you who are returning volunteers, it's going to be get back up on the bike and get the familiarity with what we're doing again, get your IRS speak up and running again, and then just get you guys back through the certification test and going. We should have no problem getting everything certified when we finish. I'm assuming that by then we will have the Link and Learn site up and running. We will obviously keep you up to date, and we'll check it every day during training. That's it for today. We will see you guys who are going to show up again tomorrow for session 2. Again, you'll need your textbook and your 4012, and thank you for your time. We will see you tomorrow. If you have any questions during the course of the training, you can always just put them in the chat box, and Melda monitors the chat box, and we will respond to any questions probably off-site to you personally.
Hey, Jeffrey.
Yes,
We had a question if we could do a review of all the answers before we end today.
let's do this. Let's do a review of all the answers as the very, very first thing we do next time because we've lost a few people. And I want to check on that one question that I wasn't sure of because we don't use that book. So very, 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 very first thing before we even start talking about stuff, we're just going to do a, hey guys, quick review, questions for the first quiz, questions for the second quiz, and we'll go through that. That's a great idea. We will go through that very first thing tomorrow with
Cool.
all of the answers. All right, guys. Anything else, Imelda?
No, that was the only question.
All right, guys. We will see you on the next session. And thank you for your time, patience, and being here. Appreciate it very much.